retinopathy?
Yes, and I was already having blurred central vision. And the retina specialist told me that by treating it early, I had a better chance of saving and even improving my vision.
It's important that we see an expert for our retinal conditions. A retina specialist also treated my son when his retina detached several years ago. The surgery saved his sight. When your vision is at risk from retinal disease, you need the expertise of a retina specialist. Retina specialists are highly trained physicians and surgeons who treat retinal conditions in adults and children, as well as severe eye trauma. If you experience blurred central vision, a curtain-like shadow in your vision, floaters, flashing lights, or wavy lines, see a retina specialist as soon as possible.
70 million people in the U.S. have learning and thinking differences, like ADHD and dyslexia. Each has their own story. This is ours. At first, I thought it was just a phase. Then schoolwork became a struggle. Emotions got bigger, and my kids started falling behind. I felt alone, like I was lost in the dark trying to find answers. Then I learned about Understood.org, a nonprofit empowering parents and kids like us. It was like we had a light to show us the path ahead. Whenever new challenges came up, their guidance helped us figure out our next step. We still have tough days, but now we have direction. And I have the tools and resources I need to help my child thrive. No matter where you are on the path, Understood can help you keep moving forward. Visit understood.org/yourpath today.
Looking for classic hits? We've got them on Rewind 1039. Lynchburg's classic hits, and we never stop the music for more than 90 seconds. Rewind 1039.
You're listening to WVGM AM and FM Lynchburg, now powered by ESPN Radio and streaming at VirginiaTalkRadioNetwork.com.
It's the final countdown to savings during the Red Tag year-end sales event at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Holiday savings have started, and this is your last chance to save. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Stop the search. Head to the Motor Mile for over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from and a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you choices more than any other dealer in the area. Sheeler owns the finance company. We make it easy to buy with in-house financing. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. 11 new car brands, over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. Our biggest sale of the year is here. The Red Tag year-end sales event at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com. But hurry, this sale ends when the new year begins.
Going once, going twice, gone! This is the last year you can have Terrell E. Mosley install a new qualifying heat pump and get a $2,000 federal tax credit. If your current system is over 10 years old, you should seriously consider updating your system and take advantage of this tax credit. Not to mention, a new, more energy-efficient system will also save you on your electric bill. Call Terrell E. Mosley. It's a free service for them to come and discuss the options available to you. Don't miss out. Call Terrell E. Mosley or visit them at terrellemosley.com.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Presley. My love for animals began when I was 5 years old and found a puppy wandering alone. Growing up in a military family, pets weren't allowed, but I couldn't turn him away, and my family let me adopt him. That moment sparked a lifelong commitment to speak up for animals who can't speak for themselves. 50 plus years ago, Elvis and I supported American Humane Society because animals deserve our voice. And now, more than ever, they still do. American Humane Society saves lives and strengthens the bond between humans and animals. Each year, millions of animals end up in shelters, waiting for someone to give them a second chance. Your compassion can change a life. Please visit AmericanHumane.org to learn more. Thank you.
One of the many things I'm thankful for this year is InsaneRadioDeals.com. because the best deals are all there for you. Liberty Flames football tickets, InsaneRadioDeals.com, gift cards to Oliver's on Rivermont, Caribbean Jerk Pod, JD's Cafe, downtown Cairo, InsaneRadioDeals.com. Great deals just in time for the holiday season at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Head to the site right now before they run out.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Much like, I think it was Caden Matheny, who had to sing last night after Liberty's victory. Who was it?
It was Colin Porter who had to sing for Jeff Goodman.
Yes, your guest Friday in the Fast Lane.
Yeah.
Look at you big timing us over here, TJ Wilkerson. We too must begin the Fast Lane with singing, but for a different reason.
Forgiveness is more than saying sorry.
Thankfully, we're not singing, although it can't be any worse than that ridiculous jingle from the movie Just Friends. We're asking for forgiveness because there is no way we are going to get to everything or remotely everything from this past weekend in sports. Virginia Tech fans eyeing potentially JMU because if things go south with, I almost said Ben Franklin, James Franklin, and maybe not enough Ben Franklins to his liking despite what Tech seems to be offering, then maybe you have a second option. That will wait. The great weekend for Liberty Flames athletics outside the football field, we'll have to wait to an extent. Some of it in the Fast Five at 5-ish, others in greater depth later this week in the Fast Lane. Virginia basketball, JMU football, all of that waits because the big takeaway from this weekend that popped up is that stats don't always tell the story. What if I told you, I don't tee it up as well as those old 30 for 30 documentaries, TJ.
Oh, yeah.
But the volume of games where the team that was statistically superior, maybe even dominant, failed to win. Friday night, biggest example. Give all the credit in the world to Brad Bradley's Heritage Pioneers. Our own Ty Tracy helped lay the foundation a decade or so ago. Two-sports star that he is, now coming into us, the morning warm-up, 7 to 8 a.m., right here on VTRN Sports. But that defense for Heritage hung in all night against Jefferson Forest. Yes, Peyton Jackson, the quarterback for JF, goes out with an injury, but in that game and others, the thrilling finish in Gretna, where Alta Vista forced a three-way tie for the Dogwood District, also in that category. And then, distant from here, but having ramifications for JF and the 4A teams, GW Danville, a double overtime victory against Magna Vista and the Piedmont District. In so many of those cases and scenarios, the winning team was not the statistically dominant team. JF, for example, outgained Heritage by over 200 yards. Heritage ran 5 total plays in the second half and overtime. They found a way to win the game. That's what it's all about. And granted, JF, they were right there. There's a lot of good they can take from it, even with their quarterback being injured. Status is completely up in the air, it seems, for this coming week against EC Glass, 6:30 p.m. Central VA Flooring kickoff show on our sister station, 100.9 FM. But that theme from Friday night, crazy finishes, wild statistical anomalies, some might call them, but I would say statistical incomplete pictures. I know that's a phrase I just made up. Couldn't think of a better word. Whatever. That's the reality of sports. Stats don't always tell the full story. Liberty, Missouri State. Liberty, statistically superior team to Missouri State. But Liberty failed when it mattered most to make the plays. Jamie Chadwell said it after the game. They did a lot of things right in that game, but ultimately, despite controlling the game, they couldn't get it done.
We wanted to control the ball. We wanted to be good on third down. I thought we did that for the most part there. Try to own time possession, keep them off the field a little bit. We did not make enough plays in the first half. We had opportunity. I thought we had them on the ropes a little bit. We didn't make enough opportunities there to separate the score. Obviously, in the third quarter, they came out and made some adjustments. We took a little while to adjust offensively and made some adjustments defensively. And, we gave up some plays there from a defensive standpoint.
Yes, they did. Defensively, they gave it up when it mattered most. And they did good but Liberty did not make plays.
I thought we did some good things overall. In general, was all three. But we needed to make some more plays. I thought some drops on offense really hurt us. We had some chances at big plays that could, again, extend the score, and we missed. We dropped some passes that were brutal, and then I thought we had some penalties that just gave them some plays there to help extend some drives that really hurt us there in the second half. And so just disappointed.
You can win the stat sheet. It doesn't mean you're going to win the game. Normally it does. But this is sports. This is life. There are situations, and it's not just a one-off. There are a lot of situations where that matters. Two things that I think are ridiculous. One, I know he was referencing the NFL when he wrote the article back like a decade ago, but Bill Barnwell and his ridiculous "it's a crock" momentum, that's spoken from a guy that clearly doesn't seem like he's played sports. Because if you played sports, you understand momentum is legitimate. Either you struggle to establish it, that can also be deemed control of the game, or you might have it, but things can happen that change the tone and feel of a game. If you're just a statistical junkie, sits on the couch, maybe in the stands, but has never actually played sports, you don't get it. If you've competed in sports in any fashion, you can tell what it's like, because there's a human psychological edge and a feel, vibes, if you will, that stats people don't get, but if they played sports, you figure it out. That was an example. The other is the clutch gene. I am a firm believer some people just know how to make plays when it matters most. And to Missouri State's credit, they did. 4 plays, 70 yards, touchdown. Granted, there were issues with Liberty's coverage, but they did. Liberty, despite having the statistical dominance, couldn't do it. I mean, Liberty fans are going to cringe when they hear this. They outgained Missouri State by 66 yards in that game. 7.5 more minutes time of possession. 7 minutes more time of possession for the Liberty Flames. Dominant in that. They ran 21 more plays than Missouri State. They literally controlled the ball and controlled the game, but they couldn't make plays when it mattered most. And ultimately, you can talk about the stats all you want, but I firmly believe this. You get what you deserve, and it's not just statistical dominance. I'm all for analytics. There's a place for it in sports. But ultimately, there are other intangible qualities you have to have, and you have to find a way to develop. And Liberty, this has got to be frustrating to their fans because they didn't have that, and Jamie Chadwell admitted as such after the game.
Well, it's hard because you had obviously there was a pathway for us to get back to the championship game, which is what we wanted to do, and you had opportunities to take it, but you get what you deserve, and we didn't deserve to win by the things that we didn't do, catching the ball in key situations or not covering the guys in key situations, and so there's that goal is now sort of gone, obviously, unless something miraculous happens.
Momentum, the clutch gene. They were not there for Liberty when it mattered most against Missouri State. And they're not the only ones. We won't talk as much about it, but JMU at Marshall over the weekend. JMU gritted and fought and found a way to win that game. There's some bigger picture takeaways that are worth mentioning later this week in the fast lane because there's some tentacles beyond JMU. Virginia Tech. Maybe James Franklin's not the best choice. Just saying. And not saying they can't do well with James Franklin, but if they don't get him and Bob Chesney's the guy they go after instead, and that's who they land, I think it might be better in the long term. Blessing in disguise for Virginia Tech. There's a bunch of reasons why, but most of it is the ability to adjust your game plan to personnel. Franklin might be able to elevate the talent, but is that just going to get Virginia Tech to like Miami Part 2, where we all know Mario Cristobal can recruit, or at Florida State or Clemson Part 2, where the rosters look really good in the summer, and when TJ and Ty and I are in Charlotte for the ACC kickoff, you're like, man, they look really good. And then they take the field and they lose games they shouldn't. And we're sitting here wondering, how come FSU and Clemson are on the ACC network? Miami's not in the college football playoff picture. And every year we've got your Georgia Techs and your SMUs that are making moves to get into the playoff.
Can I just say I hate how if the SEC had this kind of miscombobulation, the conference is deep, but when it's the ACC, it's that the ACC is garbage.
Okay.
Supposedly.
By the way, I'm gonna totally do something.
And I love the SEC.
All right. Okay. For our audience.
Okay.
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
When else are you in this week?
When else am I in this week? I'm here Tuesday, trying to be here Wednesday and then Friday.
Can you do me a big favor right now?
Sir.
You don't need to serve me, but I appreciate it.
Sorry,
Your mom,
boss.
Mama Wilkerson
sorry,
listening. Mama Wilkerson listening. You are proud of your son. You should be. Can you write down that? Because that's a topic. I know y'all touched on it Friday in the fast lane about this. This is a great topic worth discussing.
Mm-hmm.
But we already took a detour to address it. I don't want to take the full detour because
Right.
I think we need to address your topic because there's a lot of validity to what you're saying. However,
after Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the fast lane.
Technically, I'm driving the car. If that's the case, it means I have to be responsible for our detours, not TJ, even with his great ideas. It did not just extend. We talked about Liberty's statistical dominance. 21 more plays, 7 more minutes time of possession, 60 more yards than Missouri State, but they didn't make plays when it mattered most, when they had a chance to push the lead further in that first half or in the second half. We saw in JF. JF was up 14-7, and they had multiple chances to make it 21-7 against Heritage, and Heritage wasn't moving the ball, and it felt like it would put the game out of reach. And look, I don't want to pile on high school football. JF, I'm sure they'll come out like a mad hornet's nest against EC Glass this coming Friday, not only just the loss, but the playoffs on the line and the intensity that's there and the desire to really right the ship, knowing they might have a big trip to Winchester the following Saturday if JF gets the win. If not, it may be Glass going up to Winchester instead to John Hanley High School. They don't play on Friday nights, apparently. That's what I've heard. They don't have lights there, so they would have to play on a Saturday. That's going to be fun and interesting. But the thing of it is, they're not the only ones. JMU, now to the Duke's credit, they found a way to win the game when they were not statistically dominant against Marshall. It wasn't pretty. They had to change things up by opening up the deep passing game. But all of that, and even the Virginia Cavaliers, as much as we can talk about the luck box nature of this team, and they have lucked into a lot of victories, and the luck running out in certain scenarios, some of it boils down to the fact that their offense, I get it, was with a backup quarterback with Daniel Kalin coming in place of the injured Chandler Morris. And I'm fine with it. Head injuries are not to be trifled with. I would doubt Morris plays this week. I know they're, kind of trying to play coy with it at Virginia, but, I think the betting market has reacted appropriately. I think it opened up as a 2-point favorite for Duke. We were discussing that last night.
Yeah.
When we were over, when TJ and I were over getting ready for FAU Liberty. And it is ballooned up to, I think, 6.5 today. So to me, that clearly indicates, and a lot of the initial bets that come in early in the week are like your professional bettors, the people that love to put big money down and figure out where things are going and jump ahead of the perceived line movement. Not me. It's recreational. And we're talking about people that's what they do. But you talk about that, and I get it. But Virginia still, through all that had chances, through all of their issues, still dominated the flow of the game. And yet Tony Elliott said afterwards to our very own TJ Wilkerson, among others, that kind of like Liberty, they couldn't make the clutch plays.
Then we have some opportunities in the red zone that we don't capitalize and never really were able to create, the momentum offensively. And we were looking for that explosive play to get us going. And unfortunately, we couldn't find it until it was too late.
Now, some people can point to the fact, well, they've been looking for the explosive play all season long. But not only have they found it, but they've done enough to be in these games regularly. But what was your impression seeing this Virginia team? Was it the same thing where they can move the ball reasonably effectively, but when it mattered most, when they need to make big plays, Wake's defense stood tall and Virginia's offense could not get the plays they needed?
Absolutely. They would drive down the field. Jamari Taylor did his best to carry this team, but unfortunately, Daniel just fumbled the ball 3 times. Wake's defense stood tall. UVA's defense stood tall. They stopped Wake Forest on the goal line at one point. This game was won by special teams. That's what it boiled down to. It was so what's the best word for it? They were so equal that it took special teams winning this game.
Yeah, in the 84-yard punt return for a touchdown for Wake Forest. In a shootout type game, those don't feel as insurmountable. JMU surrendering some big plays to Marshall in that game. And I think if JMU doesn't surrender special teams points to Marshall, that game might have been a wider margin. But they did. They're an example of it. But in these defensive type games, Liberty, Missouri State was 21-17. Virginia, Wake Forest in front of TJ was 16-9. Heritage and the Heritage game that we called Heritage 20-14 in overtime at JF. Again, defensive games. Those margins are more magnified. Now, a little different for high school football because those tough losses for teams like Gretna, JF, and others in the area late in the season, you get a chance to actually learn from that and then bounce back in the playoffs. Bob Alvis will go in greater depth into this Wednesday in the Fast Lane. We always look forward to chatting with him from the Sports Buffet podcast. But just viewing this in the context, it's the fact that the stats don't always tell the story. And you've got to find a way to win in other areas. Meanwhile, also, we won't really get a lot into Liberty basketball today. Part of it is football's on the brain now. There was a great weekend for Liberty basketball and a lot to discuss. But there are so many other topics and storylines that we can get to now. Liberty basketball, a lot of that tomorrow, too, with John Manson from AseaofRed.com. So we will get to those now here in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
Well, Liberty Soccer came in. Liberty Women's Soccer and defeated Missouri State 3-0 on Friday afternoon to claim their second Conference USA Tournament championship in program history. The last one was 2023. Ivy Gardner, who's been great all year, offensive MVP, just really spectacular for the Lady Flames. Championship record, 5 goals in 3 matches over those Conference USA championship games that you attended because you heard our messages on the Fast Lane in the morning warm-up over the last week. But she was fantastic. Freshman Lauren Flax was also big for Liberty in that, and they really controlled this match from the beginning on Friday. It was the start of what was a really good weekend for Liberty outside of football, and that is capped off by the fact that the women's soccer team at LU will travel to Clemson to face the Tigers in the NCAA Women's Soccer Tournament opening round coming up on Friday at 6 p.m. I can't begin to tell you a lot more than that other than at Clemson, they were a pretty strong team and what's a historically loaded ACC women's soccer slate. I know there are people at Liberty that think they have a chance to win a soccer or a field hockey championship. I would pump the brakes on both of those, soccer in particular, because there are a lot of landmines to go, but impressive nonetheless for the Lady Flames. Meanwhile, speaking of Liberty field hockey, Liberty field hockey wins the Big East Championship over UConn yesterday, 2-1 in overtime in a game that, yes, my Twins were there. More on that in number 3 in just a moment. Funny note on that. But for the Liberty Lady Flames, with that victory, they capped it off after having a 3-1 win against Villanova in the semifinals on Friday. Old Dominion, who's really given Liberty fits in play, they were bounced 4-1 by UConn in that. That was as even of a field hockey championship game, though, that you could possibly find. I was infatuated with seeing how Liberty's field hockey team had their ebbs and flows in the game. UConn had early looks, then Liberty had their looks and got a goal. UConn had an opportunity and got it late in the first half, tied game. It's called off because of hitting the wrong side of the stick. Quirky rules, they're weird. It's field hockey. It just is what it is. Nobody can even explain why you can only hit it on one side of the stick, but not the other than, quote, that's just the way it's always been. Poke the bear here, if you will. But Liberty showed resiliency. UConn gets a goal in the second half. It felt like these teams were just going to trade opportunities. And then Liberty, they really controlled the entire overtime and scored with 7:31 left in overtime, just in the nick of time to be able to get the most important victory for the Flames this season, which is the one that punches their tournament to the NCAA championship, where they will take on Syracuse, also a premier program out of the ACC. But Syracuse lost to Virginia in a wild situation. I was hearing some of the fans talk about it at the game on Sunday, because otherwise I wouldn't have known this stuff. But the Syracuse fans were saying they were impacted by, and our guest at 5:55 today might be Candy Waller, the grand TSA things that are going on. Not to get political, 100.9 FM, Virginia's talk station app, if you prefer that content. But it has impacted people. So they did Syracuse. They lost to Virginia in the semifinals. Virginia got scorched by North Carolina in the championship. That's why the Liberty fans that think they have a chance to win a field hockey championship, perhaps. But North Carolina, they are the defending champions multiple times. They are their new coach is Aaron Matson, who's like 25 years old. Greatest player in NCAA women's field hockey history. I think you could make a very compelling case that she is. But she was also inherited a Ferrari of a program, and to her credit, she has not wrecked it. She has kept that thing going quickly, which is why it's hard for Liberty. Meanwhile, speaking of Liberty field hockey, yesterday,
number 3.
I have got some explaining to do for the Liberty fans that were at the game yesterday and wondering why my children were cheering for the UConn Huskies and not the Liberty Flames. Now, I go to these sporting events, and when I go, I love sports. I enjoy watching it. It's very difficult to get me to emote positively or negatively when watching a sporting event. I've just seen sports so often that I love it. I am infatuated by it, but the analytical brain is really hard to turn off. Hence, number 4 in the Fast 5 at 5. But my kids are in a different spot, and I don't want to take the joy away from them. So they picked the UConn Huskies as their team. You know why, TJ?
Why?
Because they go to Bedford Hills Elementary School, and their mascot is the Huskies.
I love it.
7-year-old logic. So when they hear the fans chanting on the UConn side, "Go Huskies," then my kids started jumping up and not only chanting "Go Huskies," but they started chanting the Bedford Hills school pledge, which I have no clue. And one of mine just consistently, "Go Huskies." And he goes, "Be respectful, be responsible, be ready to learn. It's the Husky way every day. Go Huskies." And the fans were just saying that. UConn fans, to their credit, they were great about it. Liberty fans were understanding as well, as much as my kids running around might have annoyed both sides. But it was hilarious to see the logic of what goes on in the brain of 7-year-old boys. Meanwhile, speaking of logic,
Number 2.
the Washington Commanders seemingly had to exercise some logic to change things up. They've had a couple of things that have unfolded today. One, Joe Witt Jr. no longer calling plays. Dan Quinn, defensive-minded coach from William & Mary, who's the Commanders' head coach, is taking over defensive play calling duties. I am sure Lake Lewis will be very opinionated about that tomorrow when he joins the morning warm-up with our very own Trey Lyle and Ty Tracy from 7 to 8 a.m. I just think at this point, if you're the Commanders, you're just throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. And while I am understandably in the belief that they may well be having a new offensive coordinator after this year, I don't know where you go to replace Cliff Kingsbury and his everyone figures them out in year 2 offensive system. I don't know where you go at this juncture. You'll have options in the offseason. Coach firings, coordinators want to move around. This stuff just happens. There will be new opportunities, and plenty will want to work with Jaden Daniels. I don't think Kingsbury will be long for that role. But you have to make some kind of change because, I'm getting the impression it feels like this is a lost season for the Commanders at this point, but you can't let it be a fully lost locker room, even though it's easy for us to say, TJ, hey, they need to sit there and go ahead and figure out how to solve these problems. It's easy for us to say better draft pick, but telling grown professionals who still have to put their play on tape for this franchise or someone else who may pay them, you can't really throw the towel in that scenario. It's why the tanking premise, I think, in sports can always be executed from management. You rest players more judiciously, if you will, if you don't have anything to play for. Jaden Daniels is a great example for the Commanders. Don't rush him back. But when you're in the locker room, it's hard to actually tell the players to not play hard. You can reduce your odds of winning by holding out injured players longer to make sure they get healthy when things matter the most, or they're more healthy for being trade chips in the offseason. But if you're in the locker room, you can't really have that mindset outside of your Emmanuel Clase, whatever the other pitcher for the Guardians is as well, who was part of that. The two that are under investigation and I should remember this, but whatever. Anyway, outside of that, that's the case. So that's what you have to do to be able to encounter that scenario for the Commanders. Meanwhile, also the Washington Commanders, we will prayerfully be able to get to this with our own Candy Waller a little bit later. Deron Payne, defensive lineman, suspended 1 game for the act of unsportsmanlike conduct after, in hindsight, being caught on video, like they never have cameras on the field throughout the entire game when these are all nationally televised, throwing a punch to trash-talking Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. Here's my problem with this. If this guy is getting under your skin that much, or other players are getting under your skin that much, you are legally allowed to beat the ever-living snot out of them when you encounter them on the football field between the whistles. That is where toughness is exercised. This fake tough stuff, I don't even care what they say. I have had former players tell me that they were in situations where certain, let's just say racial epithets were allowed to be used as trash talk in practice to try to make sure guys could keep their composure in games. I'm not saying it's right to use racial epithets, but I am saying in the cutthroat world of professional sports, those type of tactics are often used because the goal and the objective is to prepare someone else. I'm not saying we use it. I'm not saying I will use it. I'm not saying I'm comfortable with it being used at any level, especially the further down you go from professional sports. But it's the reality, and the whole design is you keep your composure, and then if that builds up rage and frustration into you, like it did for Deron Payne, don't get suspended for 1 game for throwing a punch when the game's out of whack. Instead, channel that to be a better player and to use that. I get it's hard. You're talking about men with testosterone and rage and everything else that transpires during a game. But you're also paid millions of dollars to be able to find a way to do that. That's called being a professional. Meanwhile, when we return in the fast lane, we will pivot away. We mentioned the JMU Dukes winning despite losing statistically. We mentioned Virginia, recapping both of those. Maybe a little hoops talk as well on the Dukes and the Who's in part 1 of covering the Commonwealth when we return here in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app and ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Get ready to fall head over heels for the perfect VW SUV. One size doesn't fit all, though, and that's why Volkswagen has an SUV for everyone. From the compact and affordable Volkswagen Taos to the tech-packed Tiguan and the spacious Volkswagen Atlas. No matter which one fits your lifestyle, you'll love the comfort, performance, and safety. Stop by Terry Volkswagen on Forest Road in Lynchburg or check us out online at terryvw.com. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
One of the many things I'm thankful for this year is InsaneRadioDeals.com, because the best deals are all there for you. Liberty Flames football tickets, InsaneRadioDeals.com. Gift cards to Oliver's on Rivermont, Caribbean Jerk Pod, JD's Cafe, downtown Cairo, InsaneRadioDeals.com. Great deals just in time for the holiday season at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Head to the site right now before they run out.
Well, the Easy Glass Hilltoppers exact sweet revenge from an earlier season loss to the JF Cavaliers. Or will JF punch their ticket to round 2 of the VHSL Class 4 playoffs? Find out this Friday on JF Cavaliers Football, presented by TrostLaw.com. Your Central VA Flooring kickoff show starts at 6:30 on the Virginia's Talk Station app, 100.9 FM Lynchburg, 95.5 FM Bedford, and open WIQO radio on your smart speaker. JF Football is also presented by Forest Youth Athletic Association, Magic City, Chrysler Dodge, Jeep Ram Bedford, and Meineke Car Care.
Hey, this is Kurt Warner, Hall of Fame quarterback, and you're listening to VTRN Sports 93.3 FM and the VTRN Sports app, the home of the NFL all season long.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
All right, we've already played the cheesy song for forgiveness, so we have asked for it. We hope you granted that there will be plenty we don't get to address in the Fast Lane because it was such a busy week going on in local sports, which we continue right now in part 1 of covering the Commonwealth.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
With Shane Metlin of DNRonline.com and at Shane_DNR Sports. Shane, going to be speaking with you, JMU. It wasn't pretty. They fell into the statistical trend of the weekend, which is the team that wins in the stat sheet may not win in the game. How much is that, in the Dukes case in particular, a testament to coaching adjustments and the fact that they found a way to make clutch plays when it mattered at Marshall this past Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things you got to give them credit for because it's not something that was happening last season in particular. Earlier this season, that was kind of the opposite situation at Louisville. Their lone loss this year, where they kind of won the game statistically, but didn't make the plays to come out with an actual victory. And so, I think it's a step in the right direction to finally get a win in that manner where, maybe you give up a little more plays than you typically do, but you find a way to win. You make that game-winning play late, whether it be the sack by Aiden Gobera or the long pass play to Wayne Knight, where you kind of just end up wrapping that game up when it was in doubt. And Marshall had a ton of momentum in the second half. And for JMU to pull out a game like that, I think is a good step in the right direction because that had been kind of the one fatal flaw of this team.
Shane_DNR Sports. For DNRonline.com, Shane Metlin with us here in the Fast Lane. You mentioned the fatal flaw as being able to do that. How much of this was all ignited by the fact that the Dukes changed their game plan and really opened up their passing game as the game unfolded at Marshall?
Yeah, I think so. I think, early in the season, we just didn't see a lot of that down the field from JMU. I think they were trying to figure out the quarterback situation. We've known all along that that's a strength of Alonzo Barnett's is he's got a really strong arm and he can really fling it down the field. It's been more of the medium level passes where he's struggled at times throughout his career. So I think that as the more he gets healthy, the more he's just firmly established as the guy at JMU. I think we tend to see more and more of that from him, and they put it to good use.
Shane Metlin with us here in the Fast Lane. Shane, all of this means that the JMU Dukes now have made their debut in the AP Top 25. Does this increase the not only exposure, but the fact that their consideration might go up for being one of those teams that gets into the college football playoff if, and it's a big if, they can win out in the regular season and claim the Sun Belt Championship?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, technically the AP Top 25, the coaches poll don't have anything to do with the college football playoff. But, I mean, we're all human beings. The people who sit on that committee are human beings. And if you see other people are saying, well, this team looks like a top 25 team to me, you have to at least kind of consider, like, what's being talked about out there, right? I mean, and it's not like they're completely sequestered away from everything like the basketball committee gets to be in March. So they're going out living their daily lives here in between rankings. So I would think it has to at least get JMU into consideration for that. Memphis being that team that was in the spot for the fifth conference championship spot, even though they weren't ranked, they go out and lose. It's going to be somebody else this week. We may see JMU's name mentioned. It may be a Tulane or a South Florida or even a North Texas, but they're definitely one of those handful of teams that's going to be in the conversation, I think.
JMU Dukes football has been the start, but it's not the end. We'll shift over to basketball briefly with Shane Metlin of DNRonline.com. The Dukes, they battled against Washington and Lee in their season opener, and it never felt the way you would want against the Division III school in one of those bye games that's cheap and easy for teams. We see it throughout the non-Power 6 programs in college basketball. How big was the win against Coppin State to bounce back from that and have a much more impressive victory Sunday?
Yeah, it was important, I think, to get that done. They played relatively well. I mean, they kind of maybe could have like made it even bigger blowout once they got up by 20 points or more in the second half. But I mean, they play a lot of people that they're still kind of trying to find a true rotation. I think right now they're still playing 10, 12 guys, pretty significant minutes. So I think we're going to see improvement from the JMU basketball team. Beating Washington and Lee, like, it was one of those ones where you never were like, oh, this is going to be an upset. You never really had that feeling. And, it's not a given anymore. Delaware, Boise State, Western Michigan, there's a lot of like fairly solid mid-major teams that lost to non-Division I teams here early in the season. So I don't think you take it for granted if you're JMU, but I'm not sure how much you kind of read into that game versus just trying to maybe have a better performance each time out from here.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, is being able to do that and just seeing what you can build on. The season is still young in basketball. The insight is from someone who remains forever young, especially in our hearts. Shane Metlin with us here in the Fast Lane. Shane, please forgive me for all the cheesiness that's come out over the last 24 hours, text before, and our chat today. We hope you'll still join us in the future in the Fast Lane.
Of course.
Now to UVA.
With Jerry Ratcliffe, veteran contributor for the Virginia Cavaliers beat, as he's covered Virginia for a while, and he's now sharing that insight as he has for a while. Also at jerryratcliffe.com. Hootie, great to be speaking with you in the Fast Lane. The theme of the weekend for us in all the schools that we cover in Virginia, high school and college, is statistical dominance did not necessarily equate to victories. UVA, the latest example, they outgained Wake Forest by over 100 yards, but they could not make the clutch plays when it mattered most, and they gave up big ones, including the big 84-yard punt return for a touchdown from Carlos Hernandez to Wake Forest. How big is that being the 88-yard return? How much is that the ultimate deciding factor that in this spot, a clutch team that Virginia's been all year, they just couldn't be in this one?
Well, Ed, as Virginia fans are well acquainted with, Virginia's played so many close games, particularly in conference, that one mistake can cost you the football game, and they made a bunch. They had 3 turnovers, 2 at critical times, and then the punt return is just simply unforgivable. You can't allow that to happen, and they had terrible coverage on that punt return, and that cost them big time. I mean, any one of those plays, if it had gone the other way, probably would have resulted in a win. But, Jamari Taylor ripped off that long run late and set them up inside the Wake 35-yard line, and then he fumbled on the very next play. Killed that momentum. They could have maybe at least gotten a field goal out of that, and then got the ball back, and then marched it down inside the 10, and Danny Kaelin, the backup quarterback, down to fourth down and threw a fade pass into the end zone, and that's a 50-50 play at best. And the kid was double covered, and it was incomplete, and that was the end of the game. That's 2 passes this year that they've lost on that same play at the end of the game, on the last play of the game. So, had they completed those 2 passes, they'd be 10-0 right now. So it just comes down to little things, but mostly mistakes, and they made way too many mistakes to be able to recover, particularly with a backup quarterback. Even though Wake's defense was doing a pretty good job against Chandler Morris until he got hurt, I still think that Morris would have found a way to put some more points on the board had he not gotten what appeared to be a concussion early in the game.
You referenced the quarterback situation and kind of teased your initial thoughts, Jerry, about how the Chandler Morris injury changed the dynamic for Virginia. How much of it is not just the dynamic, but also, for all of the Morris, he's found ways to win. It's not always been statistically pretty. Offenses seemingly buy into that, and when that's gone, it does change the vibe around a program, even if it's not statistically quantifiable, like it felt watching Virginia's offense against Wake Forest.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you got a 6-year veteran who's seen it all and done it all, and pulled things out of the rabbit's hat, pulled the rabbit out of the hat in so many of these games, as opposed to a kid who has played 2 quarters of college football, essentially, heading into that situation and put under extreme pressure against a really good defense. I mean, Wake's defense is top notch. So we all saw what they did to SMU, shut down their running game and won in ugly fashion down against the Mustangs. So if you're going to be Wake Forest, you got to be really sharp offensively to be able to do it. And Kaelin, he's just not there yet. I think he's got a lot of promise, but he's just too inexperienced at this point.
No doubt about it, Hootie. Pivoting over to Virginia basketball. They haven't necessarily been the prettiest and smoothest victories, but Friday against North Carolina Central, 81-62 was the latest example. Are you concerned that three-point shooting has been so off for the first 2 games of the Ryan Odom era, or do you trust that he evaluated the right guys and at some point when it falls, this team will become more lethal than they've looked?
Yeah, well, it wasn't too bad the other night against North Carolina Central. Granted, again, it was against a team that's not that good, but I think it will continue to improve. They've got some really good shooters on that team, and I think the fact that they have some dominant big men is probably going to help open things up for the perimeter as we progress. I think right now he's just trying to experiment and improve, because their press defense has improved game by game, and I think their post defense has improved game by game. I think it's just a matter of time for all these guys just to get more familiar with one another and to get used to that system. But I think it's just a point of getting more mature together and playing together.
It is. We're close to that and looking forward to seeing more of that in basketball season. Jerry, we look forward to your insight as always at jerryratcliffe.com. Thank you for sharing some of that today in the Fast Lane.
Thanks for having me, Ed. We'll see you soon.
Always our pleasure. Jerry Ratcliffe with us here in the Fast Lane. When we return, the Virginia Tech Hokies and, I don't know, do we call it FAA willing, TSA willing, whatever is allowed, with Candy Waller trying to fly over and get acclimated to life across the pond. She's got a crazy booking and traveling schedule, but good Lord willing, we'll be able to connect with her as well. Next in the Fast Lane, VTR and Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTR and Sports.
It's the final countdown to savings during the Red Tag year-end sales event at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Holiday savings have started, and this is your last chance to save. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Stop the search. Head to the Motor Mile for over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from, and a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you choices more than any other dealer in the area. Sheeler owns the finance company. We make it easy to buy with in-house financing. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. 11 new car brands, over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. Our biggest sale of the year is here. The Red Tag year-end sales event at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com. But hurry, this sale ends when the new year begins.
In most things, it's hard to go from ordinary to extraordinary. It's easy with your home or business. Call the Concrete Wizard and transform your place into an extraordinary space. If you're tired of looking at unsightly concrete, then bring light to your old surfaces. Call the Concrete Wizard for free design consultations, free estimates, and fast professional concrete resurfacing. And visit theconcretewizard.com for ideas from other before and after photos.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Will the Easy Glass Hilltoppers exact sweet revenge from an earlier season loss to the JF Cavaliers? Or will JF punch their ticket to round 2 of the VHSL Class 4 playoffs? Find out this Friday on JF Cavaliers Football, presented by TrostLaw.com. Your Central VA Flooring kickoff show starts at 6:30 on the Virginia Talk Station app, 100.9 FM Lynchburg, 95.5 FM Bedford, and open WIQO radio on your smart speaker. JF Football is also presented by Forest Youth Athletic Association, Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Bedford, and Meineke Car Care. An A for effort, but a what for execution? That's the question we're asking on this TrostLaw.com Fast Take. As the College Sports Commission has reportedly cleared over 12,000 deals worth over $87.5 million since starting to vet them June 1. Meanwhile, just a fraction of that, 394 deals worth about $10 million, were not cleared in that span. Certainly, I'm not sure how the inner workings are operating, and I'll confess to that, but it's a 4-person committee doing this. Are they really doing the best job, or are they acting to not get sued?
Hey, this is Virginia Tech analyst and former Hokies tight end Mike Burnham. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
The hype! It was there early. Is it too much or justified? Right now in
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Virginia Tech Hokies.
David Cunningham of TechSideline.com with us in the Fast Lane. And he's at The Real Decon on Twitter, as well as TechSideline.com and your TSL podcasts. David, great to be speaking with you as always. Neoclis of Dallas, already has earned an ACC Player of the Week award, and the season is just 1 week old. Is the hype justified, or is it a little overblown given the opponents?
Yeah, Ed. I think Neo, the hype is justified for sure. It's interesting because he got up to a little bit of a slow start in that opener. He was only, I think, 3 for 13. He didn't necessarily find his shots very well. It felt like he was forcing it a little bit. And Mike Young talked about it after the game, that it felt like Neo was putting a little too much pressure on himself having to score. Now, he did have 9 assists. He finished with 8 points, but 9 assists. He was the third Virginia Tech player with 9+ assists in an opener in Tech's ACC history, joining a guy like Jamon Gordon and Sean Padula. And it was like, okay, this guy's getting his feet wet a little bit and trying to figure it out. And then, man, he comes out of the gates against Providence quickly. He scored 12 of Virginia Tech's first 20 points, 17 of the first 30. He goes off for 33 and just hits big shot after big shot. He had 6 assists, 5 rebounds. And this is a guy who showed up on Tech's biggest stage yet. And the lights weren't too bright for him. And it wasn't like he was forcing it. It looked very smooth. It looked very easy for him. I thought Neoclis of Dallas did a very good job of just kind of being himself for the Hokies. I think you saw a really good snippet of just why Virginia Tech recruited him, why Tech wanted him, what his future holds, kind of the promise around him. And yeah, there's a lot of excitement going around now, deservedly so, but I think he's still got a long ways to go as far as this season goes, and he's only going to get better. He's only going to get more consistent. And I think that was just a really good kind of a teaser of what's to come for this season. And you can kind of see now why Mike Young all off season's like, I feel really good about this team. I feel really good about this team. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, when you got maybe the best freshman in the country, you can see why.
You referenced not only maybe being the best freshman in the country, but this is a loaded freshman class. Do we need to rethink freshmen, not just to include those top 100 or top now, maybe top 20 recruits that are coming out of high school, but also to include players coming from abroad like Neoclis of Dallas?
Yeah, I think so. I think the European game, or any international game for that matter, they're sending so many guys over now. I think DeRitter from UVA is another guy who has been fantastic through the first couple games of the season for UVA. I think those kind of players, they just bring so much experience, so much professional experience in games played where they come at it from a different mindset. And that's something you can't really replicate. I think if you're Neo and Virginia Tech, I mean, he's a guy who has played legitimate games at a really, really high level in the Greek league against guys who are fully grown adults. He's a 19-year-old, born in 2006, which is crazy to think about. And this is an adjustment coming over to college. But yeah, I think when you're talking about best freshmen in the country, you have to consider all these new European imports or international guys, period, because there have been a lot of them over the last few years. You saw a couple last year. This year, of course, you got two really good ones in the Commonwealth, and I know VCU's got one too that it's really excited about. I think there's a lot of excitement around these international guys because you bring them in and they are so well-rounded already in a lot of ways. And so much in terms of European development goes into that one-on-one player growth, development, making sure that the player is ready to produce when he gets to that next level. And you see it especially in like European soccer. I know Chris Coleman loves talking about this because that's why it's so exciting when you get a European prospect, because these guys have been well coached and well trained for a very long time. And the other thing, as Mike Young has talked about, man, their recruitment processes are, I think, a little bit easier at times. You don't have to deal with as much chaos as might come on the high school recruiting circuit in the United States.
That was the next question we were going to ask, David, is it more attractive for a lot of coaches, especially maybe older ones like Mike Young, that you're kind of tired of all the BS, a lot of the butt kissing? Those are my words, not his. But the butt kissing that seems to have to go on with a lot of high school players, whereas when you're dealing with kids who've already competed against adults and been playing like professionals, you just view it more like a professional relationship.
Absolutely. No, you have to have the relationship to start, Ed. I mean, you can't just go in blind and hope it works out. But this so happened where Chester Frazier, Virginia Tech's associate head coach, who Mike Young hired over the summer and brought back to Blacksburg, he grew up with Rudy Gay, who most people know, NBA player for a very long time. Rudy Gay's agent was Alex Saratis, who worked for Octagon. He's the same guy who represents Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he represents Neo too. And through that relationship, Chester Frazier and Alex from Octagon, they connected about Neo and kind of got the in, right? Not everybody's going to have that in for every player. And it's going to vary by year and vary by where the guys are coming from, whether it's Germany for Antonio Dorn's sake, or whether it's Belgium, or whether it's Greece, right? But yeah, I think when you can narrow in on a guy, and we've seen this on the women's side too at Virginia Tech recently. I mean, just think Georgia Amor, right? That's a little bit different, but Australia, right? When you get players from outside the U.S., a lot of times they have a little bit of professional experience, which means that they probably have a little bit of experience being paid and treated like a professional. Probably a good thing to have around your locker room, but also they understand that this is a business, especially now. I think there's so much, as you put it, BS that goes on with high school recruiting that it just can be very, very difficult. And for a college basketball program like Virginia Tech that is trying to kind of get any edge it can, where you don't necessarily have an easy time recruiting against teams, I don't know, Blue Bloods, Duke, Virginia, North Carolina, in this area of the country as far as high school recruiting goes. If you can kind of zero in on a guy from overseas and get him to come on the campus, and he only takes 2-3 visits, and you can kind of persuade him, right? The market for those guys is huge, but also very, very narrow, because there are only probably going to be so many of those guys going after them. It also depends on when their recruitment comes open, right? And those guys are pretty easy to deal with because they have a lot of agents. As far as you get to the high school circuit, and it's a lot of handlers. It's just more complex. And I think when you heard Mike Young talk this summer and also in the preseason about just kind of how relaxing and how I mean, he was obviously nervous that Neo wasn't going to come, but how easy it was to recruit him and to talk to him. And he speaks good English, and he is a great family, and their representation was awesome, just as far as working with Virginia Tech and making it an easy relationship to get started. And I think that's not something you find nowadays in terms of high school relationships, where high school coaches and college coaches might still have a relationship. But as far as the players go, man, it's kind of like the Wild Wild West sometimes, Ed. It's just like, who knows what these players are thinking? They could be thinking, I'm going to transfer and go to 4 schools in 4 years. And I don't know that you necessarily see that with a European kid.
We'll wrap it up with David Cunningham of TexSideline.com on this question, because we have to get something with Virginia Tech's football coaching search. Am I off my rocker in believing that every time I see JMU football play a game, and every time I see their coaching staff make adjustments from the first half to the second half, and it helps them win games, and then I hear the explanation from Bob Chesney afterwards, and it makes perfect sense to my not-so-expertise mind that maybe Virginia Tech might be better off if they land someone like that than even a James Franklin of, hey, if you give them the right resources, let them go out and do the X's and O's thing, and you might wind up with a spot where you're like Georgia Tech or SMU, where you have a good X's and O's coach that's winning, as opposed to maybe the Miami, Florida State, Clemson model right now, which is those rosters look better, but it doesn't seem like things are gelling.
Yeah, well, I will say this, Ed. I think if you can get James Franklin at Virginia Tech, I feel like that's a pretty sure hire, because that guy has won. He's a proven winner. But as far as a ball coach goes, Bob Chesney is it. Manny Diaz at Duke, he's it, right? There are those guys out there. And I think every time I turn on the James Madison game and watch those guys play, they're very well coached. Everything just looks seamless. And Chesney, his explanations after games are always very well thought out and thorough, and you can tell that he just puts so much time and effort. Not, of course, all coaches do that, but he just has such a great understanding of the game of football and knows exactly what he wants to do, how he wants to attack it, and what he needs from his players. And they can adjust mid-game and figure it out, and it comes easy to them. And they don't blame other teams when they make mistakes. They go, okay, what do we need to do to fix that? And that's the kind of mentality you want. I think if Virginia Tech ended up with Bob Chesney, it would be a home run hire. I think he would be a fantastic fit for the Hokies. Now, obviously, it's been a quiet handful of days around here. It still seems like James Franklin's the front runner, but Bob Chesney would not be a bad option if Hokies had to go that direction. I think he'd be a guy that would come in and win. And you look at his resume, Ed, he has won at every single level, starting with his time way up north, back at the D3 level.
A slight form of confirmation bias to wrap up our chat with TexSideline.com's David Cunningham. here in the Fast Lane. That always warms the heart, David. We need it because it's getting cooler out there.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon, Ed. Thank you.
Indeed. Our pleasure. David Cunningham, TextLiveOn.com here in the Fast Lane. He's at The Real Decon on Twitter. We're at Fast Lane Ed Lane. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and however you listen to podcasts. Or on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA, Gretna, Danville, Southside.
And last but not least, or maybe least, just for you haters, left hand up the Commanders.
As long as it's not in the form of a punch. Boy, it's been a rough last couple of games for the Washington Commanders. And then the loss yesterday to Detroit, which featured a punch thrown at the end of the game, but from Deron Payne, netting him a one-game suspension. On top of that, Joe Witt Jr. relieved of his play-calling duties as the defensive coordinator. Is this the low point in year 2 of Dan Quinn? Seawall joins us in the Fast Lane. Madam President from Bowie TV Sports, Candy Waller. So we'll ask the question for you, Seawall. Is this the low point right now in year 2 of the Dan Quinn era?
Oh, absolutely. It's certainly a low point. I mean, no one in the building or even outside of the building had the season going this bad at this point. And so it is absolutely the low point. We're seeing some extreme behavior, happening on the field from the players, just the extreme frustration there. And then, as you mentioned, head coach Dan Quinn basically shared with Joe Witt Jr. he is still on staff, but that Coach Quinn will be taking over the defensive play calling duties. So that lets you know all you need to know about how this season is going so far.
Yeah, I mean, you see all that. Those are concerns. The play calling duties. First of all, we'll get to that one. How much of this is the fact that, Dan Quinn is a natural because he's a defensive-minded coach, that if you're going to make a change at coordinator, it's in the middle of the season easier to make that change and have the head coach taking over the defensive play calling duties rather than if you get rid of Cliff Kingsbury, which probably seems like it's going to happen in the offseason. The whole offense may have to change. There's not a lot of viable candidates outside the building.
I mean, I think definitely because of all of the issues that are being, that are so widely seen, especially in the last few weeks on defense. And of course, like you mentioned with Coach Denson having a defensive mind that is, he's been successful in the defensive coordinator role. I mean, something needed to be done. You did see the effort there from the offense yesterday. You did see them trying to get some things going when we know they're kind of digging deep there with their practice squad, especially with the having, the way their wide receiver room looks right now. And so something absolutely needed to be done, and it needed to be done on the defensive side of the ball. So it was kind of like now or never. Joe Witt has value. He has something that he needs to contribute, but that defensive coordinator role is just too much for him right now. And where his abilities lie. So Coach Quinn had to take that over.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a spot where you're the Washington Commanders, and something had to change, especially on the defensive side of the ball, giving up 40-plus points, which has almost become the norm for that defense. The other part is the disappointing element to it. We can get back to Deron Payne. How much is it reasonable for fans and those around the Commanders to be disappointed that he acts out his aggressiveness? And I'm not sure what was said by Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you got the whole game to take that out on the opposing team rather than after the game.
I mean, everybody can be disappointed, but here's the thing. I asked publicly to quarterback Marcus Mariota after their loss to the Green Bay Packers that I had observed over the last year that this team really has a hard time dealing with a loss. This is a group of individuals, as individuals and as a group, they just do not deal with losing very well at all. And we've covered Deron for some time now. We've gotten to know him a little bit. We saw years ago when he and Josh Allen got into it on the sideline at a Dallas game, and they were getting, destroyed basically. And we know that he has that type of temperament, especially when the trash talking is getting heavy and they're also getting smacked in the mouth. You hate to see it, but at the same token, unfortunately, I wasn't surprised because this season is going very, very bad for the defensive unit. And I'm sure other teams were letting them know about it.
Candy Waller with us here in the Fast Lane. Seawall, you're getting ready to head over to Madrid, Spain. First of all, we send our thoughts and prayers for safety and travels to and from the other side of the globe, to you, to Lake Lewis, to all of the members that are covering the Commanders, and especially those that are part of our family. What is your assessment of how the Commanders approach this trip and the fact that their playoff hopes look slim? Where are they looking in terms of areas they can still hang their hat?
I mean, here's what I will say. We saw the Commanders not make any moves at the trade deadline. That doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't try, but I'm not certain about that. But they didn't make any moves nonetheless. So clearly, with Dan Quinn making this move, he is making an attempt at salvaging the season, or at least making a move this week before they head into the bye. They know, based on play, as well as on top of all of these injuries that continue to mount, because Trey Amos, cornerback Trey Amos, has a fractured fibula. Now, he will be out for some time. So it continues to mount. They're still trying to make a push. This is very evident with him making this move today, that he's trying to salvage what he said that they were going to do this year, and that was to build on next year. So far, he's not held up to that based on the team's performance. So we can see, the aggression and the desperation here of what they're trying to save for this season.
We look forward to seeing what transpires. We'll hear it Sunday, 9:30 a.m. airtime on the VTRN Sports app around the Lynchburg area. But we most importantly look forward to the insight from Madam President of Bowie TV Sports, Seawall, Candy Waller, with us in the Fast Lane. Seawall, a pleasure to speak. We, again, don't say this lightly. Prayers for smooth, safe travels to you and yours, and enjoy Spain while you're over there.
Thank you so much, and I'll be talking to you guys again soon.
Indeed, it's our pleasure. Candy Waller with us here to wrap up the Fast Lane today. Now on to Freddie and Harry until 7:30 p.m. is the airtime for Philadelphia at Green Bay on Monday Night Football. If you're like me, I have got my now left hand up to the haters at the Alphabet Group and that are at the larger group that operates Disney. Since I can't watch the game, I will do one thing. Listen tonight on the VTRN Sports app for what, TJ? How much money does it cost to download the app?
$0. It's free.
It is for free. So we'll do that. We'll recap all this tomorrow in the Fast Lane. In the meantime, on to Freddie and Harry in progress.
And a pudding. You got to be open to tasting the banana.